Today we are looking at, covering learning outcome 4, and learning outcome 4 is focused primarily on, looking at the use of technology in society. So what we want to be able to do is understand how we are using technology in society in general, day-to-day life. So this would be looking at, certain aspects which they've specified here, which is looking at, understanding the use of technology in various sectors like business, in, for example, in the case of education, finance, manufacturing, health, and marketing. So some of these obviously we are aware of, but what we're going to do is obviously discuss this in a bit more detail with specific examples. And for each of the examples, what I'm going to do is obviously refer you a particular article that I would suggest that you should look at reading, because they will specifically tell you, say, for example, the usages of technology, in each of these fields. So, for example, what is the role of emerging technologies, in, say, healthcare in particular? So, it'll be a good read for you to understand how technology and the advancements in technology are essentially being used in the case of healthcare. Then, when we look at management in general, how is the digital transformation, or, for example, the use of technology. The obviously we have been using technology in business for years now, years, and obviously I would say decades. But we want to be able to look at specifically, areas wherein we want to know what are the, let's say, um, usefulness and advantages actually of using, technology specifically in a particular business area. Now, in business areas, there could be lots of things. So you could look at, say, for example, finance, administration, operation, engineering, sales, marketing, business development. But what we want to be able to do is basically understand one particular area, and in that one particular area, we want to be able to, go into a bit of detail by looking at reading a study to understand how is it helping, this from that context. Then we look at the use of technology in healthcare education. So obviously, there is an article which I will essentially, provide, which will be focused on giving you a snapshot and a summary of how this is being used in this particular sector. Then there are one or two government reports that we have, which basically, talk about the use of, technology. When I say technology, it could be wide ranging, not just computing, AI, robotics, nanotechnology. And the idea here would be to try and understand how it is helping in the field of bioscience and, in general, technology sector. And the last article, which is of importance, is obviously an article compiled by the UK government, which basically focuses on understanding the use of artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence is going to be used, or at least some parts of it are going to be used with regards to, the usage from a government perspective and how these are going to be useful. So some of these articles would essentially require you to look at, obviously doing reading, and this reading essentially would be, useful to get a good grasp on today's, discussion that we want to do, which is on learning outcome 4, which is understanding the use of, technology in society. And the idea of these small articles or case studies is primarily to ensure that you understand their specific functions within each of these sectors. So education, finance, manufacturing, healthcare, and obviously business. So I've obviously there is a lot of reading that you can obviously do, but what I've tried to do is ensure that the reading that you're doing is concise, to these 4 or 5, specific areas. So just briefly before we start the session, what I want to do is obviously draw your attention towards, these areas that I have pointed out, and how they have been, put up onto the, presentation. So when you see the presentation, what you're going to see is obviously the last slide, which is always further reading or in plenary. So here is where I put these specific article links. So one for a business, one for healthcare, one for, healthcare system and management, then bioscience and healthcare sector, and then use of artificial intelligence, which are all related to the assessment criteria 4.1. And these would be about, each of these articles is about 10-minute read when you look at, going through them in a bit more detail. So for example, this, when you click on that link, it'll take you to this particular article, and this is where it talks about, you know, emerging technologies for healthcare, which is a study which has been carried out, and in general will give you updates of, how you need to understand the use of technology, AI, telemedicine, we call remote medicine, telemedicine, and those are the advancements. Then we talk about digital transformation, which is happening in business and management sectors. Again, an article here. Here you'd be able to download the PDF, and the PDF is basically a research article, and that talks about how, over the 2 decades that we see developments which have happened, post 1995 with the coming in of the internet, actually have allowed businesses to become more productive, more efficient. And obviously a case study here which basically talks about the research which has been carried out to understand how it is helping, businesses to transform and use more and more of technology integration into it for the purposes of efficiency and productivity. Then the use of technology in healthcare education, again, a detailed article, which is a review which has been carried out, because obviously there is lots of developments happening. So this particular review, which was carried out, is essentially in 2019, and it talks about 2021 or 2019, and it talks about the use of e-learning, which is now coming into most organizations like healthcare sector, manufacturing, education. And why is it important that e-learning needs to be a part? Because part of this can be part of the learning, and lifelong learning can essentially happen through e-learning systems. Then there is a government report on bioscience and health care technology sector, which is obviously a little bit old report through 3 years back, but it gives you a very good idea in terms of background and idea about, what and how these developments are being shaped by the government. And when they come out and see the usages of it in business sectors, how is it that they see, this helping businesses to increase the GDP of the country? So, for example, if you employ IT systems, you employ use of AI today, what is the productivity increase that you, as business, you get to see because of the usage of technology? And then there's a report on the artificial intelligence, which was compiled, by the government. And this is a good summary report which talks about, what the government is doing and where they do see the integration of AI happening within the sector. So IT point of view, employability point of view, and people who are looking at studying this particular course would want to know, where is it that if I get into the field of AI or start using and understanding artificial intelligence, language learning, chat GPT or agent models and, machine programming, then in such cases where it is being deployed, what is the level of business, what is the salary structures, and how these companies and numbers are being reflected by the government is actually given in this particular report. So again, each of these are about 10 to 15-minute read, but they will directly relate, to the assessment criteria 4.1, because when you do your assignment, it'll be required that you look at usage of technology specifically, and that usage of technology that you're going to look at is going to be, sector specific. For example, it is going to be looking at business, education, finance, manufacturing, health, medicine, and marketing. So it is going to be relevant from a point of view of, understanding what to read, where to read, and how much to read, because your reading has to be, quite concise, so that you are able to then use some part of that reading that you have done to be able to bring that in your, I would say, assignments or in some of the tasks when it is asked for. Now, in general, we will start off with the particular bit, which is to understand, the importance of technology in society, because what we want to be able to do is understand where all are we using science, or where are we using computers, or when I say technology and IT equipment, we are looking at talking about, anything like smartphone devices, tablets, PCs, servers, networking infrastructure. You're looking at, usage of internet related devices. So all this is primarily being, covered specifically in the usage of technology. When we say integration or usage of technology in our day-to-day lives. Now, one such thing that you're, obviously witnessing yourself is the fact that we are looking at using the live. You can see the live usage of technology specifically, in the field of education, because we are using Zoom, which is a video conferencing software. We are using, audio video, which is a part of your PC or your equipment, and the hardware with the usage of the internet, the audio-visual equipment is actually allowing us to, look at studying in the comforts of our own home, and that is where you see that technology is being used in education. So there are various many usages, and what we are going to look at is primarily focus on one or two of them, and this would then allow you to say, for example, um, build into what we are discussing with regards to the usage of, technology in society. Now, there are loads and loads of videos which are available, specifically on YouTube. I have put one video in today, primarily from a point of view of ensuring that you are able to understand what is the usage of technology. There is lots of discussions, debates which have happened, and people have looked at talking about the role of society, and science in general. But these videos could be videos that you would, say, for example, want to watch, because they will give you an additional, I would say, knowledge and a screen, and, for example, a snapshot. What I would say is you'd probably get a snapshot of how technology is shaping the way we essentially do, business, or essentially go about in carrying out some of the activities, on a day-to-day basis. So this video is what I would suggest that you watch offline, simply because of the fact that due to copyright licenses, I wouldn't want to be able to play that video essentially on the session, but obviously you can use the YouTube link which I put in and then watch that video, I would say offline, to be able to get a bit of a good snapshot of how you're looking at, this particular learning outcome. So, with this bit of background, I would say let's start discussing this particular learning outcome, which is focused on, understanding the importance of technology in society. Now, I would say most of us are very clear by now, because we've covered more or less 70% of the unit, that, when we do talk about, the use of technology in society and the way we want to look at IT and IT related set of equipments helping us to do things better, quicker, faster, be more productive at work, or be more efficient. We do see this happening. A simple example that I would give you is sometimes when you're on LinkedIn, TikTok, or Instagram, or Facebook, you get to see a lot of videos which are being shot of factories. For example, ice creams being mass produced, or for example, certain equipments being mass produced, or anything that you look at, they show within factories. Now, when we look at this particular video, what comes to our mind is that when industrialization happened, what tended to happen was that things started to be mass produced. So, for example, when you look at a washing machine factory or a microwave factory or an iPhone factory screenshot, you get to see that there were these things which were created by engineering, and in engineering put this into practice by creating machines which allowed the production of certain set of products, physical products, hardware products, to happen quite quickly. So today, if I look at a bottling plant of Coca-Cola or Pepsi, they are able to, across the globe, produce, I would say, millions of crates of, Coca-Cola or, soft drink. Now, this is happening all because of the machines which are helping to produce and, mass produce and ship some of this across to consumers or markets or, retailers, because there's a lot of demand. Similarly, if we look at that particular concept and apply this to the technological sector, what you do get to see is that when the computers were introduced in the 80s, computers were, or before the 80s, they were big, size mainframe computers, which were the size of your room, and they had to be given commands on punch cards to be able to do certain complex transactions. But when we saw 80s, personal computer came about from IBM, and obviously other companies followed suit. And what you get to see is that computing is something which came into our house. When Windows was introduced from disk operating system or DOS, we went into graphical user interface or GUI based system, which with the advent of Windows allowed things to happen so that typewriters went away and people started typing, printing and other things started to happen with computers. Now, as the speed of computers increased, the number of transactions they can carry out increased. So we started with processors like 386, 286, 386, 486, then came Pentium, then you had Pentium 2, Pentium 3, Pentium 4, and then you had Intel I-core processors. You would generally see that the computing or computational power in computers started to increase, and that meant that they could start to do complex transactions. Then with the coming in of the first supercomputer, IBM Blue, you know, it could do one pentamillion transactions or carry out one pentamillion calculations, pentaflop calculations every second. Now, that was possible because a lot of transistors, billions of transistors were, because the size of the processors became small, the silicon wafers on which the transistors are burnt into and the processor is produced, the nanometer process, as we call it, started to go down. And that meant technology could squeeze in more transistors onto the processor, which meant it had more computational power. You look at the iPhone of today and you look at the iPhone of 2007, it was introduced. It is 100 times faster because the processor in the phone today is much more capable than what was available in 2007. So what we are seeing is that there is a big shift which is happening in terms of development within any sort of technology that you pick out. So if I just look at computers, or if I just look at the mobile phones as a device, within that the chips have become so powerful that you are able to pretty much do everything on your phone today as you would normally do on your PC or Mac or laptop. So what we are seeing is that because technology is improving and there are advancements in technology which are happening, this is actually allowing, things to become faster. And obviously, a lot of this technology is now being deployed for the use of, helping us do our daily course, which is, for example, if you send an email, you send a text message. If I look at 20, 30 years back, there were pagers which were there. You could send messages. There were no mobile phones, there were pagers. And they were essentially one-way medium of communication. So you could page or text. And I don't know if you can relate, but 20, 25, 30 years back, doctors were asked to carry pages in the hospital because if they were required in emergency to a particular place, there was a paging station from which you could page or send it a short text message. The pager received it and the doctor could then be called to come to that particular place. Because if you were on rounds, obviously you weren't having phones that you could, speak to or call at that point in time. And there were only landlines or fixed telephones. But if you look at from there and you look at now today in hospitals, obviously you have everybody carrying a mobile phone. You have, for example, in every place, walkie-talkies which are available. And if somebody needs to be called, they can be called at a, fraction of a second to say, okay, emergency, you need to reach here. So what has happened is what we are seeing when we say importance of technology in society, what we are seeing is that technology is becoming inseparable part of our day-to-day life. And in this case, how we communicate, how we work, travel, learn, interact is all becoming dependent on technology. Now, when we do see technology helping society and progress of society advancing, that is where we are looking at the particular learning outcome, which is understanding the importance of technology in society. Because if you look at after World War II, the Industrial Revolution allowed mass production of devices and gadgets to be done. So, for example, in the 60s, refrigerators, washing machines, microwaves, they started to be mass produced because that was industrialization at the big level. Now, with increases and obviously advances happening in technology and innovations within computing technology, what has happened is industrialization has now started to use a lot of the innovation which is coming because of computers and computer related technology. So in this case, what we're looking at is that if as a company, if as an organization, even as a country or as an economy, if you do not use technology and integrate that in various sectors like your economy, your education system, healthcare system, communication system, you are seen that you would be left behind. Now, there are countries in the world still where 5G technology is not available. That means there is a restriction in terms of the usage of the internet. Speeds are limited, to certain megabytes per second, and in certain countries, even CDMA is still being used, which is obviously the lowest form of communication spectrum that you could have on mobile phones. So in such cases, transmission of images, for example, if you want to send an image across like a multimedia text message, might not be possible. So in such cases, what we do see is that the technology is there globally, but in that country it is, or in that economy it is not available. And because of the fact, why is it not available? Because money is an issue, development is an issue, infrastructure is an issue. And if these things were to come in and come into that country, the speed at which the economy would grow would also increase. So those are the aspects that we are looking at, understanding when we talk about how society is benefiting from technology. Now, China, for example, currently is also testing 6G. Japan is testing 6 or 7G. Now, why they are doing it? Because they would want, the availability of data and communication to happen at breakneck speeds. That means they want more speed, and obviously the speed at which data, information, knowledge, accessibility can be done, they want to increase that. And that would be possible if they include or bring across, I would say advances in the telecom spectrum, which would allow the data to be communicated in a much faster and, quicker way. Now, other things that we want to look at in terms of when we say understanding the importance of technology in society, we could look at broad areas. One could be the role of technology in daily life. For example, very basic part of it would be today, we don't have those watches wherein if you want to get up in the morning at 5 a.m., you put a timer on your watch or an alarm on your watch, which used to be like a winding watch, and it used to ring. But today, what happens is you have either a Google smart speaker or you have your phone. And what you do is you normally put an alarm for in the morning to say, okay, wake me up at 5 a.m. And you have that alarm going off, But in the olden days, it used to be either a small radio based alarm or a transistor based alarm or an actual watch, which used to be, an alarm watch. But those obviously things are gone. So how do we see technology coming into our daily life? We have things like smartphones, we have computers, we have internet at our homes, and this allows us to consume data, or get data, information, news through these mediums. Now, previously, if I go back 20 years, most of the routine was that people got up in the morning, made a cup of tea, and obviously switched on the TV to get the morning news, right? How many of us now watch the news on the TV? And how many of us actually look at the news on our phones first thing in the morning? So this is the difference, because now you have the accessibility and information available on a device like a smartphone, which wasn't there 20 years back, right? A phone was there, but it wasn't there in terms of having internet or having the ability or a screen to be able to show you news or image. So in such cases, what you do see is this is integration of technology in our daily lives. Now, the other thing that you do is when I talk about, for example, advancements in cars, we have been having the petrol engine or the diesel engine for centuries, which is what normally people are aware of in automobiles. But now electric cars are available, and that makes a difference because essentially people don't need to refuel. They are obviously not polluting the environment, but electric cars need charging. And obviously first thing in the morning, first during the night when you park your car in, those of you who have electric, you plug it into the charger. So electric cars or vehicles have become a part of our life now, and government is promoting usage of more and more EV or electric vehicles because it is helping to reduce the environmental pollution or global warming. You look at home automation, role of technology in daily lives. We didn't have microwaves 20 years, 25, 30 years back. They were available in countries like modern countries like Japan and, America and some of the other Western economies. But if you look at people still in certain countries do not have access to microwaves. So they need to heat a cup of tea or warm a cup of coffee or whatever it is. They do it on a gas or a burner. Now, home automation has come a long way. You have coffee machines which are connected to the wireless today. You have your hob which is connected, could be a part of your connected home. You have your heating which is controlled through a display or a monitor. And you can actually also have what is called wearable tech. Ray-Ban has introduced Meta glasses, which basically allow you to wear the glasses. You can ask questions, you can listen into the Bluetooth and loads of things. So wearable tech is coming in. You have smart watches like Apple iWatch, Samsung Galaxy, which when worn on your wrist can help you monitor your health conditions like heart rate, oxygen rate, your pulse, your ECG, and these are usages that it has been made possible by advancements in technology. That today you are able to do online banking, for example. If I look at 10, 15 years back, we all used to go to the bank in the branch, go to the teller, get the money, or go to an ATM. But today, if you have to transfer money or pay somebody, all you do is either use app like Apple Pay or log into your online banking and straight away be able to do that. So how convenient that has become over the years is something that we want to understand how role of technology is enabling things that we are doing and we have taken them for granted in our day-to-day life. A couple of days back, you had that incident with Barclays wherein the bank was bank systems or servers were not were down or there were some problems with it, and as a result 12.5 million customers were affected in the UK because they couldn't do banking, they couldn't withdraw money or do online transfers and things like that. Only possibility was you were able to withdraw money using the ATMs. So technology in any field, any sector that we look at is now become seamlessly integrated into our personal life. Because of this integration and advancement possible, whether we use a smartphone, a computer, the internet, whatever it is, we are able to basically get convenience and efficiency because the way how things are allowing us, when I say things, I mean technological advancements and equipment and hardware devices are allowing us to, do some of these applications and functions in our day-to-day life. So this is where what we want to do is understand where technology is helping us. So if I look at today, for example, a lot of people who have diabetes or have a condition, they can get a smart monitor which is on their wrist, and that can help measure blood pressure, your sugar. It can help measure your heartbeat, your ECG. Everything can be done. How much is that device costing? Maybe 30, 35 pounds. If you want something very advanced, very stylish, you might go and get an Apple Watch or some sort of a other watch. But these devices have now become so accessible that you can get something for 15, 20 pounds and you can have it on your wrist and it does all the basic functions. Now, this is where technology has made that difference. How has it made that difference? It has made it convenient for us to be able to use and get data which is meaningful data for us. Now, we can go into and discuss some of the other aspects very briefly. Is that there is this particular role of technology that we see in terms of economic impact. Now, how do we see economic impact? Economic impact means either the output of the nation is being increased, the businesses are turning out more products and services because they're able to do things faster. If you look at one such aspect of economical impact, one of the things that you can see right now is that if we were to buy something, if you were looking at buying, say, for example, a dress or something, 10 years, 15 years back, you had to go into a shopping mall, get into a shop and buy it. But today, while sitting at your home, you can actually buy it online, right? So when you look at the growth of online businesses, e-commerce in particular, that has created an economic impact. That means in terms of increased GDP, increased sales or demand, consumer demand, and thereby finally leading to increase in the GDP of the country or economy is an economical impact. because a lot of businesses are now trading online. If you look at 10 years, 15 years back, when companies used to look at creating a digital media spend, they used to say, okay, we're going to invest this much on TV, this much on radio, this much on print advertising. And print advertising was basically the highest that they could do because TV advertising was expensive. Only big companies could do it. But today, if you look at all businesses are planning more so, okay, where do we advertise? Digital media, social media, websites. So the reason why they are doing it is because the consumer patterns in terms of shopping have changed. A lot of us today buy on Amazon, right? I think I pretty much buy every day on Amazon. Whether it's a small plastic jacket that you need to order for the office, you need to order some stapling pins or, toners for printers, things like that. More or less every day there is some sort of ordering happening on Amazon. How was this happening a couple of years back? You look at a company called Loreco in the UK, which was a stationery and an office supplies supplier. They were huge, right? And in 10 years, what has happened is they have transformed everything to online. So today I go to their website, I can order from there and they deliver the next day. But with Amazon, you can get same day delivery without paying any premiums. So what has happened is earlier the administrative manager in the office used to decide, okay, if you have any ordering for the month for your office stationery, please let me know by email. So we will say, I need 2 pens, I need a post-it, I need this, that, and one time ordering was done. But today, because of the convenience of e-commerce, anything can be ordered at any point in time. So what this has allowed is that technology has started to drive economic growth. And this enables business to streamline operations, reduce cost, reach broader markets through e-commerce and digital marketing. And this advancements in manufacturing, you look at car manufacturing, previously, if I go back 10, 15 years back, most companies used to produce 10 to 15 cars a day or 20 cars a day or 75 cars a day. But today, if you look at a normal factory producing cars, they produce 3 to 400 cars a day because the use of robotics and automation has allowed them to speed up the process of manufacturing. Now, if the speeding up of the manufacturing has happened, that has brought in more efficiency. That has meant that the company could actually run multiple shifts. So they have 8-hour shifts in the morning, in the afternoon, and then in the evening. So you look at the Nissan factory in Sunderland, it runs 3 shifts in the day. You have 8 hours, then you have 8 hours, and then you 8 hours. So that factory runs 24 hours, in terms of producing vehicles, and produces every shift produces 400 vehicles. So they produce between 1,000 to 1,200 vehicles a day. But if you look at 25 years back, 30 years back, this used to be production of 70 to 100 cars a day because there was no integration of technology with human engineering, with the power that humans have, but with the integration of robotics and automation, and that has helped in increasing production and efficiency of cars, for example, in the automotive sector. You look at education. Could you have imagined that you would be studying online 10 years back, 15 years back? Online platforms, virtual classrooms, educational applications, artificial intelligence, e-learning have been made possible because of use of technology. So this is something again we see technology in education. Similarly, when you look at healthcare, now COVID gave a lot of push to things which were not possible or not being used remotely. But one of the things that happened was telemedicine. Facebook, some of the companies and other companies which have now introduced, wearable tech, healthcare devices. So Apple's iWatch, is actually a device which is classified and counted under what is called wearable technology. And in that also, the iWatch now has a lot of health applications in it because they built sensors onto the iWatch which allow you to measure your pulse, your heartbeat, your oxygen consumption, your ECG. So it has become a wearable health device. You have surgeries which now can be performed using robotics. And then you have telemedicine. So people can actually log into databases to look at giving examples of what problems and symptoms they are having. And the database then from the use of PC and advanced usage of PC applications is able to diagnose the problem and prescribe medication. So we see advancements of this happening, within medicine field or medication as well. And in general, if I use word medication, I would say healthcare, because healthcare has also witnessed drastic improvements due to technological innovation. And if you look at MRI scans, you look at CT scans, you look at equipment which has come into, the medical field, because technology has allowed this to happen. So, for example, we know ECG or electrocardiogram is done by putting some sensors on your chest to be able to measure your heart rate and see how the heart is beating. You have echocardiogram, which can happen, which is to find out the strength of your heart and how it beats, the valves in your heart. You look at, for example, medical imaging, which is happening through CT scan, MRI scan, or any sort of scanning like X-ray and other bits. They are all advancements in technology, which is basically allowing diagnosis, effective diagnosis of treatment to happen. Now, if you look at breast cancer scan today, there were no machines available 20, 30 years back. But now, with the help of scans, mammograms as they are called, you are able to detect the early signs of cancer. Now, this is happening in all areas of, cancer-related technology. Then you also look at how technology in the healthcare sector within the NHS is an example. So NHS deployed a £1 billion automation and computerization system. So today all your medical records are available from your surgery to pharmacy to the hospital. All you have to do is give your NHS number. So when you mention your NHS number, they are able to get hold of everything, your medical records and everything. So this is because there are centralized systems which have now got created. They have databases, and the data is stored, which enables finally enables the collection of data, tracking of data, and calling of data to be able to see what are the most up-to-date results or diagnosis available that can be provided. So we can go into individual areas of where we see technology, having an impact, and the advancements in technology having an impact. The mention of electric vehicles that I did a couple of minutes back can be related to environmental and sustainability impact which the technology is having, because there were, we had solar panels and wind turbines about 20 years back as well, which were essentially helping us convert sunlight into electricity, or wind power essentially converting into electricity. But could you have imagined when Tesla started manufacturing and came up with this concept of electric cars? It wasn't very popular. But today, an electric car is much faster and does the same set of operations which a petrol powered or a fossil fuel powered car would do, combustion engine based car would do. But now you have electric cars which are available. You have smart grids which basically are able to reduce the loss of energy when it is transmitted from one power station to the other, and thereby you look at reduction in terms of carbon emissions which are happening in this sector. So this would be an environmental impact which technology is helping to do. So in general, what we would look at is, by reading through some of the articles that I've mentioned, you are going to be able to see how technology is actually helping us in everyday lives. So role of technology in everyday life, you can look at communication as a simple example, email, phone calls, messaging. That is a basic use of technology that we are doing today, either through a PC, Mac, or a smartphone. Now, if I look at 20, 25 years back, there was nothing called GPS or global positioning system. So when you were traveling from one location to the other, usual AA maps is what I used to open, and I had a directory in my car dashboard. And if I was going from London to Manchester, I was wanting to look at which roads and routes I would take. I would actually open a paper map and actually see, okay, we're going there, we're going here, and from there we will reach. But today, you just put the postcode in, and the navigation straight away allows you to follow the lady or the gentleman, and that guy gives you, guidance through the satellites, and you are able to follow a particular route to be able to reach, your destination. In between, the navigation is also able to detect there is going to be congestion, there's an accident which has happened, can I suggest an alternative route? All that is possible using advancements which have happened in the GPS side of things. Banking is one, online banking, digital payments, I've mentioned. shopping through e-commerce, and obviously wearable techs like smart trackers and watches and other medical related equipment which people are today having access to is all helping, you know, in terms of doing some of the things that we do, and we have taken that for granted, using I would say using technology in general. So there are lots of things that we are aware of. All we need to do is look around us and see how technology is essentially helping, various sectors and various businesses, and obviously how is it making our lives more easier and more I would say more productive. You're able to do more tasks, you're able to do more things in lesser or shorter amount of time, and that is all possible because of automation and the integration of technology into day-to-day things that we do. And there are some real-time examples that I've given, say for example, in this particular table. So when you look at communication, not if you see business travel has reduced overall globally. People used to travel for business purposes, for meetings, for business expansion, networking, development. But today, all of that is happening using Zoom or Teams meeting or some sort of video conferencing platform. What that has happened, even if it is a 1% reduction, just hypothetically speaking, because I don't have the data, but even if it is a 1% reduction, you think of the consequences, how technology is helping lots of areas. 1% reduction in travel would mean people, if they are traveling less, either by road, by air, or by train, that means they are contributing less in terms of carbon emissions. That means you're saving time. Time is money. You're saving time if you're not traveling for 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, long haul flights. You're actually saving a lot of time. The third aspect is that because you're not traveling in those locations, you would have taken a taxi, you would have done a combination of taxi, bus, or tram or a tube. That would have also meant some carbon emissions, uses of electricity, things like that. So even 1% reduction in travel is helping so many areas. Maybe the environment, maybe the things like carbon emissions. You're looking at time being utilized more judiciously, and all those things in terms of economic terms means less expenditure for the company, less wastage of time, and in some cases that time is now being utilized to do other functions. And if it is possible to do those meetings online, then companies are actually doing it, because that is showing the use of technology to be able to you know look at things slightly differently, and that means things can happen quicker, faster, cheaper, and also good for the society and also good for the environment. So in the first assessment criteria, that is what we want to understand, is that how is technology being used in key sectors. And when I say key sectors, we are looking at key sectors like business, we are looking at key sectors like education, finance, manufacturing. So when we talk about banking, it's related to finance. When we talk about car manufacturing or electric vehicles, it's related to manufacturing. If I talk about, for example, education, online learning, e-learning is basically that example. If I talk about businesses, use of video conferencing, communication through video conferencing equipment is essentially saving costs, time, and travel. If you look at marketing, we can talk about, there are loads of examples in marketing, digital media marketing, search engine optimization, websites, e-commerce in particular is a great example that you could talk about from a point of view of, marketing. So some of these things I have written, here. And if I look at going into nitty-gritty of it, one such other example of finance is that, again, if you go back a couple of years back, most of your accounting was actually done on books, physical issue of invoices handed over to the accountant. They were basically tally the invoices, do bookkeeping, entries into a computer, create a spreadsheet, and then look at what the company turnover was, sales is, profit is, and things like that. But today, all that can be done, electronically using softwares like Sage, into Books, QuickBooks, and they are comprehensive softwares which just do not do expenses or invoicing or reporting, but also are able to do payroll and management of the payroll in terms of pensions and disbursement of salary and everything, and it's all automated. So today, a lot of companies just have maybe one person or two-person, managing the finance side of things because everything is electronic. But previously, if you look at the finance department of the company, had maybe 10 people in it because one was a bookkeeper, one was a, in person dealing with purchase, one was actually doing invoicing, one was actually chasing up collections, or invoices which were issued, one was looking after banking, and one was looking after credit and other things. So they could be, and one was looking after payroll or, other expenses side of things. But today, all this has been replaced by software. Obviously, people are competent. When companies employ them, they provide them training to be able to use those softwares, and that is allowing things to happen far more quickly and in a far more efficient and cost-effective manner. So you could look at picking out some examples in various areas when we do talk about various sectors like business, education, finance, manufacturing, healthcare, medicine, and marketing. And that would help cover the first assessment criteria. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. Now, the merit and the distinction criteria is an extension of what we've covered in terms of use of technology in various sectors. But in the first merit criteria, it is basically talking about benefits of using technology for business processes. Now, this is where it essentially becomes, a bit specific because we are not generically going to talk about so many different sectors, but we are going to talk about, a specific part of it in business, which is to say, what is it, for improvements of business processes, right? Now, what is a business process? A process is when a company employs a particular standardized way of doing things, which would allow it to increase either the output, the efficiency, or in terms help it to do some savings. Savings can be cost savings, time saving, and in doing so, it will also help it to produce what is called improvements in quality. So when I look at policies and processes, why they are adopted in the organization, because being they are going to be applicable for things that the employees, staff, contractors of the company do time and again, right? For example, one of the things that we look at as an example would be that in UK Versity, for example, when we look at students studying with us, we know that there is a lot of assessments which are going to come in terms of assignments. Now, as a company, as a business, as a educational institution, one of the things that we clearly know is that we need to have number of assessors to be able to mark the assignments, right? Now, but with the use of technology, what we can also do is bring in more efficiency and faster marking. Now, one of the things that you have to look at as an example would be that as a college, we employ Turnitin and AI detection software. This 10 years back, 15 years back wasn't there simply because it wasn't available. So what the lecturers had to do or assessors had to do was read the full assignment and obviously go through and see which parts of it could be copied, pasted, and not referenced. So today, if we get an assignment, we straight away put it onto the Turnitin, and that allows us to quickly see what is the use of AI, what is the similarity, and that report, when it is generated, does away with the human factor or element of looking into similarity and plagiarism in assignments. Now, this is a process. Now, because we know we get maybe 7 to 8,000 assignments every year, there are 2,000 students or 1,500, 2,000 students studying every unit or every course that we have 6 to 8 units, it's not difficult to do the numbers. So if you're looking at that many assignments, in the year, then we need to automate it. We need to look at how do we look at having a software or some sort of a technology which can quickly detect plagiarism, similarity, and AI. That is where the use of software comes in. Now, that means we don't need lecturers, assessors, tutors, and IQA to look at copying and pasting some part of it to see whether it's coming up on Google or whether it's been copied. It's all done by the software. Now, what that means for us as a college is the assignments which used to say that when you submit you get the feedback after 2 weeks. Today that feedback is probably 2 to 3 working days. So this use of technology has allowed us to do a couple of things. Now, one is obviously reduction in terms of turnaround times, looking at faster feedback to students. Third is use of technology helping us to detect some part of the plagiarism similarity, far quickly than which was required to be done visually a couple of years back. Now, if I look at this, there is a process now. The process is we have a policy in the background and we know what has to be done when an assignment is submitted. That process is now allowed us to work on this much more effectively, thereby increasing productivity, improving communication to a certain extent between the student and the assessor, and also looking at, you know, the main point, which is productivity, because we are able to turn and down that assignment in terms of feedback far quicker that we were doing, 10 years back. So an example of business process here would be that when technology is essentially used to do a process or implement certain activities which are done time and again, but with the use of technology you are able to do it faster, quicker, better, and also maybe reduce cost and time in turn doing it. That would be the advantage of using technology specifically, by improving the process. Now, another example that I'll give you very quickly would be that if I talk about certain things that we have observed which produce errors or problems when we are trying to do a certain part of the process. For example, if technology was being used in, say, for example, producing something in the factory, and every time something was produced, like for example, let's go back to cars. So we know that on the production line, cars are being produced. But when the cars are being produced, what the production line manager is noticing is that sometimes there is a delay in some of the sections of the production line because the inventory does not arrive from the warehouse on time. For example, if tires have to be attached or upholstery has to be put in or glasses have to be installed, things which are required for assembly of that car on the production line. Now, if there are inventory or the material is not available, then the production line stops. Now, what he has observed is that this typically happens because there is no availability of inventory, and that is where the production line has to be stopped. Now, if he has identified that problem, then what the production line manager would do is basically help and sit with the purchase department and the sourcing department to say that if the production line produces in this shift, say 100 cars, and that should require that much inventory to be available in the warehouse. And that inventory should be brought just in time to the assembly line to be able to help in the assembly of the cars without causing any delays. Now, if this planning is done and he knows that there is an issue or there's a problem which sometimes comes up because the inventory is not available, what he would do is basically sit down and create a process that, okay, we need to replenish the inventory after every 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. And that would mean there are no interruptions as far as the production line or the assembly is of the cars is concerned. Now, because he understands that this problem has occurred time and again, he creates a process for it. And in that process, what he's going to do is basically integrate the use of technology. So, for example, the inventory systems would have a minimum order quantity. If it falls below, say, 10, then automatically it will trigger a reordering with the supplier. Now, that is a process which can be set using technology. Once it has been set, there is no human intervention required because you would basically set the MOQ, minimum order quantity, and you would set when this MOQ would come into play. So if the inventory falls below 10 tires or for 4 cars, that means 16 tires, then at that instance, the system would straight away send a message to the supplier to say we need 200 more tires to be shipped across within 24 hours so that the production doesn't stop. And that is basically a setting in of a process. A process could also be a standard operating process or a procedure, SOP as we call it, which is a term used in most companies. And they are set because there are certain activities which are done time and again. So in our case, there's an SOP on assignment marking, there's an SOP on plagiarism, there is an SOP on, for example, teaching, delivery, IQA, because we know these activities are done time and again. And wherever we see as a college, we can integrate and use technology to automate that process or to increase the efficiency of that process and to make sure that it helps us in reducing time and error, that is where the integration of technology is done, right? So today, if we look at car manufacturing, there is lots of things which are running as per a process. And this process utilizes enterprise resource planning systems. There are workflow automation systems and software. There are robotics, process, which is part of the assembly of the car lines. Cars being manufactured in the factory are using robotics because welding of the car parts or the body of the car is essentially done much faster and much better by robotics, use of robotics. So what companies have done, which are into manufacturing of cars and assembly of cars, they have included that the first part of the process where the car begins to come together is to put together the chassis or the frame of the car, and that is handled by a complete separate division in which people would only look at operating the robots, but essentially robotics would be responsible for doing all the welding and putting together of the frame because it requires manual labor, and obviously welds can be different when people do it. But with robotics, they are able to maintain consistency, check the accuracy, increase productivity, and that allows this process of the assembly of chassis of the cars to happen quite quickly. But because also it is repetitive tasks which have to be done time and again, that is where technology and process comes in, is because they have set certain activities that have to be performed in this amount of time, and that allows the manufacturing and production of cars to happen seamlessly. That means every day 200 cars are being produced. If that was the target set, 200 are being produced, not 199, not 205, but the process is allowing, if it is followed to the core, it is allowing it to produce the same number of cars every day from that assembly line. So this is where a business process comes in. So it looks at increasing, first of all, it looks at detecting problems. When you know there are problems or issues coming, then you sit down and understand why this problem and issue is coming. Then you put the things into some sort of a frame to say, okay, these are things which are done repetitive. These are repetitive tasks. This is what requires. This is where the error happens in that repetitive task. This is where the delay happens. Once you identify the problem, then you put a process in place how to overcome that problem. And that process is then followed across the assembly line by every employee, every section where the car is assembled, and thereby allowing, and what managers do is they look at where they can deploy technology to make that process more faster, quicker, efficient, less cost effective, or basically more cost effective and less time consuming. So that integration, as an example, has to be explained in this particular task. And you might choose an example of, business, education, finance, communication, manufacturing, healthcare, marketing, whichever one you understand. But these are the benefits processes bring across. Efficiency and productivity, collaboration and communication, decision making becomes faster. So the use of Power BI on Google Analytics and other bits. Google Analytics, a lot of competitors use. I use Google Analytics for looking at website traffic and how the customers are coming or what the learners are browsing. And we use insights from Google Analytics to look at displaying, updating, and changing information on the website. Power BI or business analytics is also being done essentially by companies today to look at how they can use data, existing data, which has been collected from purchases, from previous shopping patterns, and how they can utilize this data, which is business intelligence or Power BI business intelligence, to be able to use it to customize and obviously look at providing faster and quicker solutions by deploying a process to their customers. So this is something that you have to look at, and there's a real world example that you can look at which can be used to complete this particular assessment criteria. Is that okay? Any
Yeah.
questions?
No.
The last part is distinction, again, an extension of the merit criteria, which says now that we've understood what is the benefit of using technology in improving business processes, what we want to be able to do is analyze the impact of the usage of that technology in bettering the business process, right? And again, here you would be required to use one particular example, which is going to be allowing you to address this particular criteria. That means we know that processes help in the importance of process would be that the processes are going to help in, say, efficiency and productivity. But taking that point, what you have to do is see how that improvement in efficiency and productivity with the use of technology is one, making efficiency and productivity possible, but how is it helping the company or that application or that sector to overall look at improving, say, customer experience. One of the things which we now get to see that technology is helping us do is that a lot of companies now do not serve feedback questionnaires or surveys. When you say, for example, you go in and you're going for a holiday, you stay at a hotel for a couple of days. When you check out from the reception, the receptionist or the person at the reception counter would actually give you a feedback survey. How do they serve it now? They normally send you an email, right? And on the email, when you click, it is multiple choice questions. When you click on those, it'll allow them to electronically get that data. But in the background, there's a software which actually creates a report for them also. And that means at any given point in time, in real time, they are able to see what customers are saying about them, about their services, how many customers are, for example, rating them 5 stars for their services provided, and what is the feedback which in general customers staying at the hotel are giving. But in the previous days, it used to be somebody used to collect the questionnaire, then obviously use the questionnaire to tabulate the data manually, and then produce a report for the management. Today, at a click of a button, you're able to actually see the customer experience data, for when they are served with this questionnaire via email. You're able to see findings, results, and details of it in real time. So this is where you would see the impact is making it, the use of technology is having an impact. That means it is now possible to look at customer satisfaction or customer experience or index, some sort of an index data at any given point in time, because some part of it is now being collected electronically. It is being analyzed, collated, and reporting of this data is also being done using technology. So you have, say, for example, Google Forms. Today, when we do research, I remember when I was doing my MBA in 97 to 99, I did a research project and I had to actually physically print out questionnaires, send it to my participants, even in some cases go and meet them. Today, if I have to do research, what will happen is I will create a Google form. I'll use Qualmetrics or one of the applications, create a form on it, and send it to my participants either through Facebook if they are on Facebook or LinkedIn. And obviously, I'll expect that they will be able to spend 2 or 5 minutes depending on the size of the questionnaire. They'll fill that up. When it comes back, automatically the software will calculate the graphs, the tables, the data for me without me having to manually do that. And that is where we are seeing the usage of research collecting tools allowing me to get to results of what I'm trying to find out quite quickly rather than having to spend time and weeks to be able to do so. Is that okay? So again, you would
Yeah.
need to take a specific example of one of the sectors here to actually do this particular part of the task.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and in the distinction question, we should always give an example.
Yes, you would
Yes?
require
Yeah.
yes, you would require an example to actually show the analysis.
Yeah.
Normally, what happens is when you look at a past question, what tends to happen is that in the past task or the question activity would be you are theoretically covering it. In the merit,
Yeah.
if it is there, you have to add and show the underpinning of that theory, which is add an application. And in the distinction, you have to add an example. So typically, when you look at pass, merit, and distinction criteria, pass tends to be descriptively talking about it, theoretically talking about it. In the merit, you would normally show an application of the theory or the key framework which is being used or the key task which has been asked in that particular assessment criteria. And then in the distinction criteria, you're basically adding a real time or a real world example to show that you understand that this was the theoretical part. This is how it is practically implemented, but a real time application of what you have seen and explained is done using an example.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay.
Because I didn't get it in the first assignment. I got the merit, but I didn't get the distinction. I remember it was the example matter that I should have covered.
Yeah. So sometimes what happens is that if you look at um, the units in which obviously there are 7 units in this course. Some of the units that you're studying with us, obviously it is not important to get distinction in everything. If you get distinction in 4 units and get merit in 2 or 3 units or 1 or 2 units are pass, your grade will still be overall distinction because every unit has a weightage in more or less every unit is showing some credits, like the this particular unit is 5 credits only, right? But obviously, when you do the assignment, this will, even if you get distinction, you'll only be scoring 25 points, right? Because any distinction criteria will be having the credits multiplied by 5. Any merit criteria will be multiplied by 4. Any pass criteria will be multiplied by 3. So if you have a unit which has 15 credits, even if you get a pass, you would multiply that by 3, you get 45 points. But if you get
Yeah.
merit, you get multiplied by 4, you get 60 points. And you get distinction multiplied by 5, you get 75 points. So that is where you have to look at how much time you want to spend on each of the units, which units you need to do more research, more reading to be able to get score more points. Because overall, as long as you're over 285 points, you would be getting into distinction criteria. This is explained in the course handbook on pages 12 to 13, I think 11 to 13. So it tells you the
Yeah.
scoring criteria.
Yeah.
But the way you look
So
at
yeah.
the way that you look at grades is pass is always generally going to be descriptive or it is theory. And then merit, if it is there, it will always require the theory to be expanded by taking an example or showing an application. And if you have distinction, you have to give a real world or working example to be able to do the analysis, evaluation, or depending on the command verb which is there. So in this case, the D task for this learning outcome talks about analysis. So analysis would mean you need to give pros and cons, talk about advantages or disadvantages, and then summarize it towards the end. If it was evaluation, you would talk about pros and cons, build the arguments, and then towards the end, you would also make a clear decision or look at a line of decision to say, this is the conclusion because I've discussed this and I know these are the advantages and disadvantages. And by giving an example, you will actually show a conclusion as well. And that is where you will be able to get a distinction.
Yeah.
Okay,
I see.
good stuff.
Because
So
actually, yeah,
go
I
on.
just wanted to say that in my case, I'm not looking forward to going to level 4 and 5 or 6. I'm just like upskilling myself. So I wasn't really sure what's the plan? Should I aim for a distinction or a merit is enough?
I think if you aim for distinction, which will be better, the reason I say this is when you do look at going to the university with this qualification, obviously, when we look at university, they look at, giving preference to higher grades. And obviously, higher
Yeah,
grades would mean that you would probably get more UCAS tariff points, and that would mean your chances of acceptability into university for a degree course will be much higher. Although even a pass would get you in, but you have a clearing system, so obviously that would mean that in some cases universities would prefer people with higher grades first, then they will go to merits, then they will go to passes.
Yeah, actually, the thing is that I'm a graduate. I'm already a graduate,
Sure.
but I just wanted to upskill myself,